They have come and gone and come and been rolled into other armies and come and gone. It seems like the forces of the Deathwatch have been on a roller coaster ride for most of their time in the battlefields of 10th edition, but as part of the Grotmas celebrations, they have got a brand new updated 10th edition index with their own unique army and detachment rules, alongside some things they still keep from the regular Marine faction. So there is quite a lot to play around with here, and a lot you can bring in the army, with a few key exceptions that we will see in just a minute. But this video is going to cover the unique Deathwatch specific units that come in this index and see just what they can do. So first up, yes, your army rule. As you can see, you get the kill teams rule, which is a simple quality of lifestyle rule to clarify that when you have a kill team unit in your army, if there are multiple toughness characteristics in the unit, you use the majority toughness, unless there is a tied number of models, in which case you use the highest. On top of that, for transports, you follow all the normal restrictions in terms of the number of models allowed and how much space each model occupies. It doesn't really seem like much of an army rule, but don't despair, because you do still keep Oath of Moment. So you are still essentially Marines and get that tasty reroll to hit bonus against a key enemy unit each battle round. This additional rule is more to just help with the bookkeeping side of the index, due to the way that your kill teams are made up, being a mix of various models and toughness values. So that's all quite nice and simple. The detachment rule of the Black Spear Task Force brings a few additional tasty treats to your army, but this is also where some of the big restrictions kick in. Now, as mentioned, you can still bring almost all the regular Marine stuff if you want a Librarian, an Assault Intercessor Squad, an Apothecary or anything like that. That is all absolutely allowed, but you can't of course include other chapters' unique units. So no Deathwing Knights or Sanguinary Guard or Thunderwolf Cavalry, for instance. You also can't include any Agents of the Imperium Deathwatch units. And then finally, there's a list of, to be honest, older kits you probably weren't going to be bringing anyway, but there are some other things you can't bring that are now sort of the legend stuff. So things like the regular assault squads, relic Terminator squads, scout snipers, or even the regular or assault Terminators, as you have got your own, as we'll see in just a bit. So there are some limitations, but in general, you are pretty free to bring whatever you want from the main Marine Codex on top of the unique units in this index. And you can also still happily use the other Marine detachments. Things like the Gladius, the Stormlance, the Iron Spear, for example, are all very usable for you. But if you want to go full Deathwatch and use the Black Spear Task Force, you gain the Mission Tactics rule. And Mission Tactics lets you pick at the start of your command phase a choice of either Furor, Malleus, or Purgatus tactics, and these each bring a buff to all of the units in your army until your next command phase, and crucially, they can each only be used once. So it's kind of like the Gladius buffs, but these are more of a straightforward output focused buff rather than things like Advance and Charge like the Gladius gets. So Furor gives all of the weapons in your army sustained hits 1, so both melee and ranged attacks. Malleus gives all your weapons lethal hits, whilst Purgatus gives your weapons the precision rule on a critical hit. So it's very similar to the options you get in the Tyranid Invasion fleet, but rather than just being one choice that is all game long against a specific type of enemy, this is against all of your opponent's units, but it's just one choice per battle round. Despite that though, with Oath of Moment, this is really good and it can help you set up some incredibly strong combos. Letting you fish for sustained or lethal hits is just a great way to utilize the sustained or lethal hits buffs, and it is just a generally very strong boost to your output across 3 critical game turns. On top of that, you do get access to 4 enhancements, and I actually think they're rather decent ones. Thief of Secrets is 25 points and it improves the strength, AP and damage of the bearer's melee weapons by 1. So on something like a Watchmaster, it will boost your Vigil Spear to strength 7, -3 AP and D3 +1 damage. But then if the bearer of the enhancement kills an enemy model in the fight phase, this bonus gets a boost to +2 strength, AP and damage. So if you kill something early on in the game, this can be quite a significant force multiplier for a good chunk of the battle, and it is really good on some other HQs like a Judicia for instance, who could get themselves a strength 9 -4 AP 4 damage attack with devastating wounds and precision, which is quite a terrifying combo. The Beacon Angelus gives the bearer and his unit Deep Strike for 25 points, which is a great boost for getting some units around the board, and it certainly will help some of your kill team units to get some solid board control and steal some objectives from the enemy, or just get some guns into range of a vital enemy unit. You can also, with this enhancement, use the Rapid Ingress stratagem on the unit for 0 command points. So potentially putting your opponent on a massive back foot by dropping the unit in your opponent's turn to cause a load of havoc and set up an easy charge in your subsequent turn. For just 15 points, the Osseous Key is next. This is just for a Watchmaster or a Tech Marine. It lets you pick an enemy non-Titanic vehicle unit within 12 inches at the start of their shooting phase, and they have to take a leadership test on that unit, and if they fail it, that unit can't shoot. Which is of course massively powerful, but even if they do pass that leadership test, the shooting from that vehicle is at -1 to hit, so it does have some downsides. It's relatively short range and there is a leadership test to be taken as part of it, but if you are able to set this up, you could potentially stop something like a Gladiator Lancer or an Eldari Fire Prism from firing at all, which will be a huge pain to your opponent, and it could definitely help to keep one of your units or vehicles safe and alive for an extra turn or two. Finally, you have the Tome of the Ectoclades. This is the priciest enhancement at 30 points and is a Watchmaster or Captain model only, but it is a super powerful buff, allowing you to pick a second Oath of Moment target after the first. So you can get 2 separate enemy units lit up and your entire army re-rolling hit rolls against them. Obviously, this does mean you are more incentivized to split your firepower, but if you have 2 sides of the board and a big threat on both of them, you can now target both and have a much better chance of either wiping both of them out or at least massively damaging the both of them. It is an incredibly strong enhancement and effectively means that basically all of your army should at least have one thing to shoot at in a critical turn where they will be getting full rerolls to hit against it to really leverage things like your sustained or lethal hits. Now it is only once per battle, so you don't get this every battle round, but being able to get that one turn of huge damage onto 2 key units could really completely swing the game in your favor. So that could well be all it takes, just that one critical turn of having 2 oathed targets. So this is a really good enhancement. It is pricey, as I said, but I think it is very much worth it. On top of the enhancements, as you would expect from a detachment, we have our 6 stratagems. They are all nice and cheap at 1 command point, and they are all pretty useful for the most part. There's nothing super outstanding, but they are all definitely acceptable, I think. You get Armor of Contempt, of course. As Marines, you would expect this. Reducing incoming AP by 1 in the enemy shooting or fight phase is always handy, and it will definitely get a lot of use in keeping your guys alive a bit longer. Adaptive Tactics is, again, something that we see a similar rule for in the Gladius. It allows you to pick in your command phase either 2 kill team units or 1 other Astartes unit, and they can pick Furor, Malleus or Purgatus tactics, and it is active for them instead of any other tactic that may be up for the army. So if you need a particular unit to get some precision shots into an enemy instead of having sustained hits, for instance, this can help you to try and snipe out a particular character. Or if you want to put a load of shooting into a tank, then maybe lethal hits would be better than sustained for that certain unit. So it can just really help to make your army a bit more flexible and easier to take on those specific targets right when you need to. You also then get 3 types of specialist ammunition. Hellfire rounds are first. You get to pick a kill team in your shooting phase, and for that phase, their ranged weapons, excluding those with devastating wounds, get anti-infantry 2+, and anti-monster 5+. So this really can make your firepower deadly against infantry units, but even into some super tough monsters it can also be a buff. Some enemy units may be needing 6s to wound with a lot of your guns, but now you can do it on 5s, so it will still be a good chunk better. But mainly, this is going to be great for drowning enemy infantry in dozens and dozens of saves and just forcing them to end up failing a few just through sheer dice rolling. Kraken rounds are for the more heavily armoured enemy units. This is also put on a kill team in the shooting phase, and it gives your ranged weapons not only an extra 6 inches of range, which is in itself really good, but also gives them a bonus AP. So once more, letting things even just like bolters do much more damage into opponents like Marines and Terminators and other stuff with good armor saves. The final specialist round is the Dragonfire rounds, which are for when you need to be a bit more mobile. This gives the kill team that you choose the assault rule on their weapons so they can still shoot after advancing, and also ignores cover, meaning if you need a unit to rush up to get onto an objective and you still want to kill some enemies that are hiding behind terrain, you can do both of those things much more effectively now. So they're all good. I think all 3 of these specialist rounds are useful in their own ways, and being able to put them onto a specific unit for just one command point does mean, again, you can be really flexible in how you approach the enemy and how you want to take them down, and just bring the right kind of firepower to bear to do the most amount of damage or be the most impactful on a certain enemy unit. The final stratagem is site-to-site teleportation. This is done at the end of your opponent's fight phase. You can pick 2 kill team units, or again 1 Astartes unit, and they can't be in engagement range of the enemy, but they can be removed from the board and set up in strategic reserves. And they also gain the deep strike ability until the end of your next movement phase. So you can then drop them back down with deep strike in your next turn. So this can provide a huge amount of mobility to some of your slower units and some of your slower kill teams. It is just all around a really handy utility and movement trick that is definitely going to help you steal some objectives or bait out an enemy melee unit and then leave them high and dry in the middle of the battlefield, or just get around the board to get some better firing lines and get some better angles on your opponent. So it is just an all-round useful, powerful stratagem. Of course, for all of the enhancements, stratagems, and rules, the main meat of the force is in its units. And for the Deathwatch, they don't have many, but it does have some fairly complicated units that are unique to the faction. And starting things off, we have the generic non-named HQ, which is the Watchmaster. The Watchmaster is 105 points, and that nets you a toughness 4, 5 wound, 2 up save with a 4 up invuln character who can join Deathwatch veterans or the Fortis kill teams. He's got quite an esoteric weapon with the Vigil Spear, which is kind of like a custodian's weapon, but it lets him shoot at 24 inches with 2 shots that hit on 2s at strength 4, -1 AP and 2 damage, or he can swing in melee with 6 attacks at strength 6, -2 AP and D3 damage, but it also has lance. So it's maybe a little bit swingy with the D3 damage, but he can still do a good bit of work, hitting on 2s, wounding Marines on 2s, and then pushing them back to a 5 up save, so he can be fairly killy in combat. He also gets to shoot and a charge after he's advanced or fallen back, which is nice thanks to strategic knowledge, and he brings that buff to his squad, so you can make quite a scary melee threat out of him. And then he also has the Watchmaster rule, which is sort of like the Marines captains. It gives you the reduced cost CP once per battle round. So in this detachment, giving you a nice selection of free stratagems to use over the course of the game. It's also worth noting his rule is different to the Marine one, so if you are bringing a generic Marine captain as well, that potentially gets you 2 free stratagems in a single battle round, so it can combo quite well if you are just bringing a generic captain as well. Overall, he's just a fairly good generic HQ. He can make great use of some of the enhancements you have available to you, so I definitely think he is worth bringing in a list, especially if you are running the Deathwatch unique detachment. The Deathwatch also get a named character in Watch Captain Artemis. He's got a brilliant little model and is a mere 65 points, so he's very easy to include in a list. He has the same toughness 4, but unlike the Watchmaster, he's only got a 3-up save and 4 wounds. He does still keep the 4-up invuln, so that definitely helps, and then like the Watchmaster, he can join Veterans or a Fortis kill team. In terms of his weapons, his melee is okay. It's a mastercrafted power weapon which gets him 6 strength 5 attacks with -2 AP and 2 damage, and then his gun is the Hellfire Extremis, which is essentially a souped up combi weapon. It's D6 shots that auto hit thanks to Torrent, a strength 4, -1 AP and 1 damage. But it also has anti-infantry 4+, ignores cover, and devastating wounds. It's a lot of extra rules for essentially a gun that probably won't do a whole lot. It can get some dev wounds against infantry on a 4+, which is nice. It is okay at blasting things like squads of guardsmen or Eldar Guardians or Fire Warriors to chip them down, but it's not going to blow you away with its output. He gets a 6-up Feel No Pain, which is a cute little bonus, and then he brings 2 unique rules in Tactical Instinct and Unstoppable Champion. Tactical Instinct nets him and his unit lethal hits, so it's a really strong buff. Doesn't quite tie in with your Malleus tactics, but that is of course only in one battle round, so the rest of the time that is going to be a nice flat out buff to your output. And then Unstoppable Champion lets him get back up from death the first time he's killed. On a 2+, you can set him back up as close to where he was destroyed as possible and not in engagement range, and then he comes back with 1 wound remaining. So it's not amazing. If he died to shooting, he will probably just get charged and slaughtered, but it could get him back up to go into your turn and make for a potentially nasty surprise for your opponent. I would say he's not bad. Giving the lethal hits is nice, but overall he doesn't add a huge amount. On the flip side, he is only 65 points, so he's not super pricey either. And as I said, at least bringing those lethal hits to a unit can make that squad much scarier across the entire battle. So he definitely could be worth a shot if you want a unit to have lethal hits all game long. Moving on to the actual units though, we start with the Veterans, who I believe are still the older Firstborn models, but in terms of actual rules, they're largely no different anymore. They don't have the Tacitus keyword, just to make you aware of that in terms of what they can go in transport-wise, and they are battle line for you, which is great for this season of 40k. The Veterans come in a unit of 5 or 10 for either 100 or 200 points, and each one is a toughness 4, 2 wound, 3-up save model that comes with the rule Death to the Alien. And what that does is it grants them reroll hit rolls of 1 or full rerolls to hit if the target doesn't have the Imperium or Chaos keyword. So essentially, any Xenos unit, you are going to be getting full rerolls to hit into them, and this is both ranged and melee, so it can make them pretty damn reliable, especially when you factor in the huge selection of war gear options that they have. Each veteran comes base with a bolt gun and a power weapon, which is already pretty good. A full unit of 10 can be chucking out 30 strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage attacks, but it can be mixed up quite a lot. 2 in 5 can take an Astartes shield, which grants them a 4-up invuln, so you can tank some high AP shots on them. 2 in 5 can swap their weapons for a Thunderhammer, netting you 3 attacks each at strength 10, -2 AP and 3 damage with devastating wounds. 1 in 5 can take a Stalker pattern bolt gun if you want to go for a more shooty squad, whilst another 1 in 5 can take a frag cannon, and those get you a 2 damage bolter or a D3 shot, strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage gun with blast respectively. The Watch Sergeant can instead swap his power weapon out for a Xenophase blade, which brings you the same profile, just with 1 extra attack and devastating wounds, so it is pretty much just a flat upgrade. And then his bolt gun can also be replaced with a combi bolter, which again, I think is just going to be a flat out improvement most of the time. So there is a huge amount of customization. In a full 10-man squad, you could go full melee with the Watch Sergeant, 4 Thunderhammers, 4 with Power Weapon and Astartes shields, 1 with a Black Shield blades, and that in total would get you 32 attacks, 12 at strength 10, and all of them being AP2, and that would on average net you about 4 or 5 dead Terminators in melee. So they can do quite a lot of work and even more damage into those Xenos enemies like Necrons or Eldari, where you will be getting full rerolls on top of your detachment tactics. So you are just going to be able to chew through, especially Xenos, really, really quickly. Next up, we have quite possibly one of the most interesting and exciting units in the index, and one that I think is just super, super good in terms of any unit in 10th edition, and that is the Deathwatch Terminator Squad, where for just 180 points for 5 or 360 points for 10, you get the standard toughness 5, 3 wound profile with a 2-up armor save and 4-up invuln. So far, so standard, but here's where it gets juicy, because not only can your Deathwatch Terminators re-roll their charge rolls thanks to Terminatus Assault, which also forces a battle shock test on the enemy after you've made a charge, so it can potentially debuff an enemy before combat even starts. But the big thing about these Terminators is that up to 3 of them, yes, up to 3 of them, even in a minimum squad of 5, can have a heavy weapon. So 3 of them can swap their Stormbolters for an assault cannon, a plasma cannon, a heavy flamer, or a cyclone missile launcher. And then on top of that, any number can swap out their Stormbolters for lightning claws, a chain fist, or thunderhammer storm shields. So for 180 points, you can get a 5-man squad, 2 with thunderhammer storm shields to tank the shots out in front, and then 3 with assault cannons, or 3 with cyclone missile launchers, and that is just going to allow you to massively tear up your opponent's battle lines. It is such a good improvement for Terminators, and in my opinion, it really does make them worth taking. That squad, that 5-man squad we just mentioned, would be 17 toughness 5 wounds, firing 6 strength 9 minus 2 AP d6 damage shots, and up to 12 strength 4 Stormbolter shots. And then when they do hit melee, it's 9 strength 8 minus 2 AP 2 damage swings, and then a further 6 at strength 8 minus 2 AP with devastating wounds. It is just a brutal little mix. It's worth noting the 10-man version can't take any extra, so for me, I would just be taking 3 squads of 5 Terminators, killing them out to the 9s, and then just unleashing them on the enemy, and I do think that is going to work out really, really well for you. The amount of damage that they can absorb and also dish out for just 180 points is really quite significant. From an amazing unit to a really not so amazing one, the Corvus Blackstar is next, and I mean, flyers aren't doing particularly well in 10th edition anyway, but for 180 points, so the same cost as that Terminator squad, that gets you toughness 10, 14 wounds, and a 3-up save. So fairly standard fare. It still does look pretty cool, don't get me wrong, but it is just kind of meh. It does let you do some bombing run damage when you've flown over an enemy with the Blackstar cluster launchers, so potentially doing a couple of mortal wounds there, but you're only realistically going to be doing 1 or 2 most of the time because it goes off on a 5+. And then it does also have stealth, so that will help with the durability a little bit thanks to the -1 to hit. It does also get ignores cover on its guns thanks to its Auspex array, but I mean, with a twin assault cannon and 2 Blackstar rocket launchers, it's got 6 strength 6 twin linked shots and then 2d6 plus 2 strength 5 shots with blast. So it's okay anti-infantry, but even with ignores cover, it's not super mind-blowing. You can switch it up for a more anti-tank role with a twin las cannon instead of the assault cannon and 2 Stormstrike missiles, so that nets you 2 strength 10 minus 2 AP 3 damage shots, and then the strength 12 minus 3 AP d6 plus 1 damage las cannons. But I mean, even with that, again, it's okay for what it does. It's okay at taking out light vehicles, but it's not amazing for the cost. It can also carry some units. It can take 12 infantry models in total, so it does have some use. But for me, I think it is still just paying the aircraft tax that every faction seems to be paying at the moment, so I just can't really see it getting much use in the majority of lists right now. But from the flyer, we move on to the actual unique kill teams. And there are a few varieties you can take with a different loadout, unit makeup, and various options available to them. The first up is the Talonstrike kill team, and this consists of 10 models for 290 points. So it isn't cheap, and you do have to take the whole 10 models, but it's made up with a bit of a mishmash in terms of how you build it. So it comes with 1 kill team sergeant with a jump pack, 2 to 9 jump pack intercessors, and then 0 to 5 heavy intercessors with jump packs, aka inceptors. So you can bring a full 10 regular jump pack intercessors, or you can bring 5 regular and 5 inceptors in a squad, or you can mix and match to bring, maybe 8 regular and 2 heavy if you wanted. The stat lines are as you would expect, so it's toughness 6 for the heavy variant and a slightly slower move, and they all get the Talonstrike doctrines. And that means that when this unit is set up on the battlefield, it gets +1 to its AP, and it also gets a lance on its melee weapons. So all of your shooting from the heavy intercessors and their assault bolters or plasma exterminators is now going to be at a bonus AP, and that can actually make them really quite scary into light infantry and chaff units. If you take the full 5 that you're allowed and you give them assault bolters, they will be throwing out 15 strength 5, -2 AP, 2 damage shots with sustained hits 2 and twin linked. So that is going to be potentially amazing for wiping out anything from Tyranid Gaunts to Orc Boys to Marines really, really effectively. And then the regular jump pack intercessors, they've got their usual heavy bolt pistol and chainsword, so the lance part of their rule will massively help them. And if you were to take a full unit of 10 of those and made your 9-inch charge from Deep Strike, you would be looking at up to 40 strength 4, -2 AP, 1 damage attacks with +1 to wound. And that would net you around 5 dead intercessors, so they are definitely a solid little charging unit. But I think overall, if it was me, I would probably mix it and take 5 regular jump intercessors and then 5 of the heavies. Not only do you get the boosted toughness as long as there is 5 and 5 of each, you also get the extra wounds on the heavy intercessors, and you get some really solid shooting. 5 plasma exterminators can do a lot of work, and it also keeps your unit a bit safer if the enemy tries to lock you down in melee, because you've got those 5 regular intercessors to keep you safe with their chainswords, and also potentially the ablative wounds to keep your inceptors around for a bit longer. The Fortis kill team is your regular bog standard infantry intercessors, so this squad can be made up of intercessors, hellblasters, infernus marines, and even desolation marines. They are all just called intercessors with a specific weapon option, but essentially that is what they are. Again, it is a unit of 10 and it costs you 200 points, and the makeup is 1 sergeant, 2 to 9 intercessors, and then 0 to 4 with plasma, 0 to 4 with pyroblasters, 0 to 4 with heavy bolt pistol and chainswords, and then 0 to 2 with the super frag launchers, which you can swap out for super crack. So in a unit of 10, for instance, you could have the sergeant, 2 regular intercessors, and then 4 with plasma incinerators, 2 with super frag launchers, and 1 with a bolt pistol and chainsword. So it is really quite flexible how you build the unit, and it does make the squad basically good at anything you want it to do. The rule of Fortis doctrines lets the unit get +1 to hit against enemies that are below starting strength, and also +1 to wound if it's below half strength. So it is a nice, powerful bonus. It is a bit restrictive because obviously you need to get an enemy unit to below starting strength and then to below half strength. So you aren't always going to get this bonus, but it can be really powerful if you are just finishing off an enemy unit. But where I think the real strength of this squad comes in is the flexibility. You can make a squad with some good plasma output, some decent melee protection, a few ablative wounds, and then just really go to town and mix it up depending on how you want it. If you just want a really strong melee unit, you just take loads with the bolt pistol and chainsword, but maybe you want to add in some of the super frag launchers to give it some range as you're moving up the board, you can do that. It really is just super customizable, and I get that some people might argue, why don't I just bring a unit of Hellblasters and a separate unit of Intercessors? And you're right, that does have merit, but I think being able to mix them together and get the combination that you want and that you're going to play with and plan for really well can make them much greater than taking two separate units. So it's worth playing around with. Some people may not like it, but I do think that customization is quite a solid strength they have. If you want more of a heavier hitting unit, then the Indomitor kill team is your Gravis armored squad. This one is 3 to 10 heavy intercessors and then 0 to 3 of essentially aggressors and 0 to 3 of eradicators. So it's actually not a bad little package for 270 points. 3 aggressors for some melee protection and some more token bolter fire, and then 3 eradicators for their melter rifles to add some ranged punch, and then just fill the rest out with 4 heavy intercessors to add some more ablative wounds in. You are all toughness 6 with 3 wounds, and you get the rule Indomitor Doctrines, which grants you +2 to the strength of either your ranged attacks against the closest target, or if you've made a charge move that turn on your melee attacks. So turning your Deathwatch heavy bolt rifle into a strength 7 -2 AP 2 damage gun with lethal hits, which is quite scary in itself, but your melter rifles into strength 11 guns, which is a huge boost for them getting through toughness 9 and toughness 10 vehicles. It also, of course, can make your aggressors strength 10 in melee, so they can definitely punch into enemy tanks much more reliably as well. And I'll be honest, I think this is one of my favorite units in the index, just because the idea of 10 toughness 6, 3 wound bodies with some brilliant melee and ranged attacks does seem super fun. It may be a tad unwieldy, but this unit can absolutely survive a lot, and it can kill almost anything that it targets. It can also combo quite well with some of the enhancements and some of the characters you can join. If you join a character and get the Deep Strike enhancement, you could put this huge scary blob right near the enemy and just unleash some melter fire into them and kill a tank or a vehicle, and then potentially try and charge in and get those really high strength attacks to kill whatever spilled out of a transport, for instance. The final kill team, as you might expect, is the Phobos styled unit. This is called the Spectrus kill team, and this one, for 200 points, gets you 3 to 10 infiltrators, 0 to 3 infiltrators with sniper rifles, aka eliminators, 0 to 4 infiltrators with Oculus bolt rifles, which is your incursors, and then 0 to 4 with combat knives, which is of course your reavers. The rule for this unit is Spectrus Doctrines, granting your unit the ability to be removed and put into strategic reserve at the end of the opponent's turn if they are not engaged with the enemy. So it really does make them slippery and hard to pin down and fantastic for objective play. The unit does also get infiltrators and the scout 6-inch rule, as does any leader that joins the unit, so that's a really nice way to also get them right where you need them from the get-go. And of course you do get the standard set of equipment, being able to take a Helix Gauntlet or a Comms Array for a 6-up Feel No Pain or some command point regeneration. The Eliminator squad can take an Instigator Bolt Carbine to net you the free move after shooting, which again all just adds together to make them really difficult to pin down. Being able to have a unit that is able to up and down whenever they need, that can put some fairly solid shooting downrange with their bolt sniper rifles, supported by a load of bolt carbines, which are all strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage in this army, or even get some light anti-tank or anti-elite firepower with the las fusils, means you can again make a really customizable little unit that can do exactly what you need them to. If you want them to just sit back and be really difficult to pin down and hold an objective, you can do that and then move around the board to score secondaries. They are just a nimble, powerful, fun little unit to bring. I do think all the kill teams have potential. There are some limitations, of course, in that you have to bring full squads, so they can be quite pricey. They range from 200 points to 290 points each. But the fact that you get to really set the loadout that you want, and you can build the squads that are going to be genuinely brilliant at taking on all manner of targets and all manner of tasks. You know, they are going to be good at shooting, they're going to be good at getting up close and personal, they're going to be really mobile, they can up and down. They are just very, very difficult to kind of plan for when your opponent is kind of putting together their game plan. So I think they are going to be quite difficult to take out effectively. And if you build them right, they are going to be really good at taking on whatever your opponent throws at them. Overall, I would say I think this index is a nice one, especially if you do want to keep running your Deathwatch. It's not the most supercharged, powerful index out there, and certainly I can still see the advantage of running something like a Gladius over this detachment, but there are really good parts of this detachment. I do like the tactics that you get in the Furor, Malleus, and Purgatus. I do think the enhancements are really good. I think the fact that you can get army-wide sustained or lethal hits and have that combo with Oath of Moment potentially on 2 targets is really powerful. And whilst I think the kill teams are pricey, that added level of customization, if nothing else, makes it a really unique, quirky, interesting, and fun army to put together. And I do think it will be cool to see a load of varying kill teams on the board, you know, firing their mixed options of plasma and flamer and bolter weapons. And I think that is going to be a nice change to see because, especially with the introduction of Primaris, it's been very much this squad is all plasma, this squad is all flamer, this squad is all bolter. So being able to essentially add special weapons and heavy weapons back into a squad like you could do with the old tactical marines does add a lot of interest and uniqueness to this index. So is it top tier competitive? No. But does it let you fulfill your Deathwatch wish list of a unique, customizable, quirky looking marine army? Absolutely. And so from that perspective, I do think this index does have a lot going for it. But as always, what do you make of this index and the rules in it? And will you be testing out the detachment? And if so, which of the kill teams do you think has the most teeth? Let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.